Hi everyone, this is Ryan from rockthedivine.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to my latest video. I want to thank everyone that likes, subscribes, asks really great questions. Thank you so much. To all the people that don't like or you write really weird shit. You can imagine what I'm thinking, but thanks for visiting anyway. All right, we're going to get into the questions from you viewers. Thank you so much. I get asked a ton of great questions, and I try to answer some through YouTube, in a short, easy, quick way, and other ones that I think would really benefit everyone to hear are usually the ones that I pick for the videos. But thank you, everyone, for your questions. So the first question is it's a common misunderstanding, and I get this a lot from people, so I sort of lumped it as one thing. It's a common misunderstanding to think that your concern or your problem isn't big enough to bother an angel or an archangel with. And I want to squash that right out of the gate. There's a few things. First, angels are not under the same sort of rules that we are. So me personally, in this physical body, I can only be in one place at one time. That is not the same with an angel. Their energy works that they can be in a million places at the same time and show up for everyone that needs them. So that's first of all I want to tell you, is that if you do call on an archangel, let's say you need help, or you're even just practicing your abilities and would like to call in some protection, you can totally do that, and it will not interrupt what else the angel's doing. Okay, so that's first and foremost. You're not interrupting them. You're not taking them away from something else. That's not how that works. Okay. The other thing is they are here. They are with us to help humanity, and that means in all ways. So just the fact that you are calling on them, it makes them so happy. And the reason I know this just personally is from talking to them and dealing with them on a daily basis. They are just so happy. A lot of these angels have been following you around, and they've been a big part of your life, but you're never turning and talking to them. So can you imagine if you were someone's friend and you really loved them and you wanted the best for them, and for 20, 30, 70 years, you've just sort of been following behind them hi, finally when you turn and go, hey, how are you? How you doing? They're just oh, we've been waiting for you to talk to us, So first they get really excited that you're communicating with them. And also when you start communicating and asking for their assistance, what that means is that you're recognizing the divine in you, and that you are a spiritual being that has all this spiritual assistance. And that is one of the things we are here to remember. It's one of the things that we agreed to forget when we came back to earth, was that we were a spiritual being and we have all this spiritual assistance. And it is in this lifetime, will you remember again that all of this woo-woo stuff and this stuff that seems out there, or imagination and what have you, what some people have been telling me is unrealistic imagination, thank you for your comments, that it's all really real. And a lot of people will come to terms with it in this life or be awakened to it, and there's a lot of people that in this lifetime and in many lifetimes won't, and that's okay. I mean, I'm sure there's many lifetimes where I personally didn't awaken to this, and it's just part of how it is. But anyway, with my rambling, you can always call in angels for any problem, big or small. They're happy to help. Do not ever think that you have to go anything alone. And if you want to ask them for help picking out groceries, there's angels that'll do that. I mean, there's tons and tons of different kind of light beings and angels and spirit guides, and they have all different skill sets, and it doesn't just have to be for the major stuff. They're happy to help humanity in all ways. So that's the first thing. And I also want to say one more thing. I clicked stop and then forgot to finish my thought. Whether it's angels or spirit guides, when you're not utilizing their assistance, I mean, they don't want you to use it incessantly, and just in the sense that they also want you making decisions for yourself and using your own intuition. But when you're not utilizing their assistance, you have some really bored angels and spirit guides following you around. And they're going to follow you around and try to help you no matter what. And they've been helping you this whole time. You might not recognize it, but they're working behind the scenes all the time. And they have been since the day you came here. And even before then. So utilize their assistance, give them some attention, and they're here to make things a little easier for you. I had a lot of people that have asked me about asking for signs from their angels and guides, and people have even asked about receiving feathers and pennies. And that is a very, very common thing that happens early on when you really are starting to awaken and recognize that you are a spiritual being, that you are part of the divine. And sometimes you're asking for signs, and sometimes it's just you're starting to have this sort of awareness. Are angels real? And you're questioning things maybe internally. A lot of times you will start finding pennies, dimes, and feathers, usually white feathers, but they can be any kind of color feathers. And they tend to keep showing up regularly. So it's not just walking down the street and you find a penny. I mean, that happens to most people. But when it keeps happening and you're like, how did I find a penny in the middle of the couch when all I used my debit card? I don't even have change in the house. Or you're walking through the yard and all of a sudden there's one feather and you think, oh, well, birds. Then you go back to go in your house and all of a sudden there's a white feather right by your door and you're like, wait. And then you go inside, maybe you find a white feather in the middle of your room one day and you're like, well, the bird wasn't in my house. Anyway, that is definite, very common signs from angels and guides. They're just trying to say hi, and they're trying to hint and remind you that you are part of the divine, you are a spiritual being, and that they are real. So anyway, if you're finding pennies and dimes very often and feathers, enjoy it. Whenever I find them, I just wink at them because I know what they're doing. I don't have it happen as much now. It happened when I first started awakening to my abilities and having many unusual things happen. That was one of the first things that I started seeing. And it happened so much, there was just no denying that something more was going on. Now, they don't really need to do that because I recognize they're there and I talk to them every day, but they're happy to give you signs, but you do have to recognize them and sort of not reason it away in your head, like if something makes you pause and stop and go, geez, this is sort of peculiar, just know that your angels and guides are probably reaching out. So I have a lot of people that get a hold of me and they ask about hearing a muffled noise before they go to sleep. Sorry, I'm looking down at make sure I got that right. So yes, that's very common. And the muffled noise, well, first let me explain what sort of happens, what they mean. You're starting to fall asleep, and this can be before a nap or at night, and you're sort of in that stage where you're almost asleep. You're drifting off, and you'll hear almost a muffling or a ruffled, like a shh. Sorry, bad sound effect. But anyway, you know what I mean? It just sounds like a lot of stuff in your ear, like a rustling, basically. And it can be very loud, and it can even have a feeling of sort of your ear feeling full. What that is that when you start to fall asleep, you start to go up your spirit channel. So you are connected, and I've touched on this in other videos, you are connected to your physical body, your spirit's connected to your physical body with a bright silver cord, okay? And when you sleep at night, you, as a spirit, don't actually sleep. Your physical body sleeps. Your spirit goes up and off and does all kinds of things. And you return then in the morning to your body. For some people, when they're sort of in this middle stage of falling asleep, that muffled rustling noise that they hear is because they're starting to hear their spirit separating from their body. I know that sounds kind of weird. It's nothing scary. It happens every night. It's very normal. But that is that noise. So it's nothing to be concerned with. I know a lot of times when I've heard this, it's usually not at night, but when I'm trying to take a nap. But it does happen to people, and there's nothing you need to do. There's nothing you need to worry about. That's just what's going on. And speaking of hearing things before you go to sleep, I get a lot of people also that want to know why they are hearing voices or sounds or claps while they're drifting off. And what I explain in my clairaudient video, I explain under the title anyway, but that's not clairaudience when you're hearing those noises. Clairaudience works totally differently. You are hearing spirit, but like I said, it works differently. Anyway, it's controlled by the spirit and by your spirit guides. It's not something you can actually strengthen or work on or rely on when speaking to spirit. Okay, so they're just different things. And I get a lot of people arguing about that, but they're just different things. Okay. So anyway, when you're falling asleep and you might hear someone yell in your ear, or you might hear a talking or one word, what happens is, as you're drifting off, again, you're sort of starting to separate from yourself and tap into the other dimensions. And those other dimensions have a lot of static. You can hear noises or conversations that don't make any sense. But if something is actually talking to you, it's because you are in a receptive state to hear something that you wouldn't usually hear walking around in your everyday life. Okay, you're just almost like in a zone basically and picking up on what's going on around you. There's also lower level beings that like to come in right as you're falling asleep and make you nervous or scared or talk to you, and you can ignore them. They have no power. They're annoying, if anything. And if you're very concerned, if something does scare you and it's like, get out or something while you're trying to fall asleep, you just call in Archangel Michael, call in your other angels and say, you got to make whatever that is bounce, because that's ridiculous, okay? They're just trying to spook you. They're trying to scare you, and they know that you will hear them because you're in that receptive state right before you go to sleep. But it's nothing to be worried about. It's very typical. And like I said, don't be concerned. You're just hearing into the other dimensions, and the lower ones can be kind of trippy. I got asked a good question. They wondered, as a medium, if I'm affected all day, if I walk around hearing spirits, if I go places and get overwhelmed by all the spirits. And what I want to say first is that every medium is going to be different on this, okay? But, so I'm only speaking for myself. I do not walk around the whole day affected, not at all, thank goodness. It's not that I never get affected. I'm an empath, I'm a clairsentient being. I can totally get affected by energy, absolutely. I've learned to navigate that and control it to some extent. But do I go places and get bombarded with spirits? No. And the reason for that is I don't walk around with my antenna up. So personally for me, when I'm receiving information or I'm talking to a deceased loved one, an angel or a guide, I actually have to tune in to do so. I do not walk around my whole day tuned in. Not only would that be extremely unhealthy physically and energetically, but I don't want to know all kinds of shit all day long. I'm here to live my life and just be a regular person, because I am a regular person. So when I go places, I'm just me having coffee or having drinks with my friends, hanging out and not picking up on stuff, okay? And matter of fact, sometimes the more people there are, the quieter my gifts are, because there's just a lot going on. And I really wouldn't want to tune into it anyway. I want to enjoy my evening. The other thing I want to say is that this is also why some people think psychics know everything, and then that's a whole thing. I could get into a whole reason of why that's not true and why we're not supposed to. But what I'll say is that that's why a psychic maybe didn't know you were going to be late, or doesn't know what Jennifer's problem is over there, why she's pouting, whoever Jennifer is. Um, when you're my friend or we're conversing, I don't know what's going on. I'm as oblivious as you are to what's going on with whatever, because I'm not tuned in, I'm not grounded, centered, and putting my antenna up to receive psychic information. I'm just totally talking to you, being myself. Like I said, oblivious to certain things. So it's only when I tune in that I receive that. So anyway, that's why I don't really have to worry about where I go and what I do to some extent. Like I said, it's not that I never get affected. I definitely can. But you do not want to be tuned in all day. You do not want to be open to stuff all day. And when I'm teaching my students, I really recommend that they stick to either the time they're practicing or the time they're giving someone a reading, and then the rest of the day they just go about their business, because if not, they would become very ungrounded and start to feel really unwell physically. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about isn't really a question, and I've sort of avoided it because I didn't really give a shit, but I saw something this morning on my YouTube and I thought, maybe I'll say something. Why not? Why not poke the bear, right? I had a person that I deleted that was basically speaking to one of my subscribers, and not only did they call them a name, but they said that I wasn't spiritual because I had diamond earrings. And I laughed because I thought, what the but then I was also happy because I thought, hey, if you think I can afford these suckers as diamonds, then that's awesome. They're cubic zirconia, but that's besides the point, okay? I like costume jewelry, and I like real jewelry too. What I want to say, and I've seen this on other people's posts, and Kyle Gray, if you don't know who Kyle Gray is, you should check him out. He recently had to deal with this because he's a young guy, talks to angels, has beautiful oracle cards, angel cards. He's quite successful, and he got a lot of shit for wearing Gucci. And, some people were like saying you can't be spiritual and spend $400 on a t-shirt or whatever. What I want to say is that you can be spiritual and have money or make money and be abundant. And I just thought it was so funny that someone thought, like, she's not spiritual, she has diamonds in her ears. And it's like, well, would it be better if they were amethyst stones? Then it'd be like, oh, you're okay. What for the people that are questioning if someone can be spiritual and be abundant, I want to say, what you need to do before you judge is you need to stop for a second and say, okay, why am I having a problem with someone being spiritual and having money? What is the problem that I'm having with that? What connection am I making that makes them not spiritual? Because really, it has something to do with you. It has nothing to do with the person in front of you. A lot of times, even in spirituality, people want to put rules on stuff. And I just don't get it, because the farthest thing from being spiritual is putting your shit on other people or putting people in a box that you feel comfortable with. If you feel that someone you're listening to is spiritual because they're wearing a long robe and they have relinquished all their possessions and they live in a little hut, then that's cool. If that's what you resonate with and that's who you trust, that's okay. But I'm sorry, I keep touching my hair. I slept on it. Anyway, but don't say to people, well, you don't look like how I think a spiritual person looks, so you're a fraud or you can't be spiritual. They just don't go together. That's your stuff. Those are your limited beliefs. I do not pretend to be a guru. I'm just a regular broad who happens to have psychic abilities that wants to help other people. If it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, that's great too. But don't say I'm unspiritual because I like nice things. You don't know how much money I have, and you also don't know what I do with my money. I might donate most of it. I might finally be able to help my family and make their lives better. And if that's not spiritual, I don't know what is. We need to stop saying, I'm okay with this only if it's like this. And it's like, you need to start questioning why that is that way for you. And it's okay if you think, hey, that's how I feel. That's okay. But don't say other people aren't spiritual. The truth is, we're all spiritual. Every one of us is spiritual. The guy down at the bar right now drinking a 6-pack is spiritual. Your grandmother is spiritual. The garbage truck guy is spiritual. The guy on TV is spiritual. It's like we're all spiritual. And when you start putting rules on people, you're segregating people, and you're saying like, no, you can't be yourself and be spiritual. You have to fit the mold that I feel comfortable with. And it's like, there's nothing more spiritual than being yourself. Early on, when I learned I had these abilities, I was educating myself on it. I struggled because I thought, how am I going to do this? I don't look like all these other people. I don't have caftans on, and my hair's not long and wavy and beautiful, and I don't have many crystals because I don't sense anything coming off of them usually. And I thought, screw that shit. I'm me, and I happen to have these abilities. And I want everyone to know you don't have to fit that mold. You can be yourself. And the abundance thing, that's a bunch of bullshit saying when people have abilities that they can't make money. It's like, you're not paying for my abilities. You're paying for my time and my energy. And the divine want us to be abundant. Often my team helps me with financially to give me good ideas and to help manage my money and tell me where I'm spending too much. You do not have to struggle. You can be abundant, and the divine want you to be abundant. What I want to say, the last thing I want to say on this rambling here, is that money is energy, and it is also a tool, and you are allowed to have as much of it or as little of it as you want. And just because you don't fit someone else's mold does not make you not spiritual. You are allowed to better your life. You are allowed to dress how you want to express yourself. You do not have to dress in a certain way that someone tells you is okay with them. You're allowed to help your family. You're allowed to better their lives. You're allowed to donate if you want to. You're also allowed to not if you don't want to. That is up to you. That's what we're here for, is to make choices. We have free will. You are also allowed to use that money to do things you feel passionate about, to create your dreams, to travel the world. And you are allowed to be unapologetically yourself. So if you like big old diamond earrings, you like Gucci shirts, or you like running around freaking naked, you can do it. And there's nothing more spiritual than being yourself. So remember that, babes.